So today is Tuesday, November 7th, and this is our live class for Aesop's Fables. Today we're going to study Fables number 106 and 107 in the Academy's Aesop's Fables course. Fable number 106 is the Eagle and the Fox, and Fable 107 is Jupiter and the Ass. So again, my last warning is to have a piece of paper if you can. Of course, these are recorded, so you can always check them out after our class meeting. But if you've got a piece of paper or a notebook and can jot some things down, you can go ahead and complete the assignments as soon as our class is over, get them turned in, and I think that's the best way to handle Aesop's Fables. There's 400 fables in the Aesop's Fables course, so we're dealing with 106, 107. I'm just going to continue going through them until we're done with all of them, and then I'll probably start again. And there will be a new batch of students. You guys will be like 30 years old, and I'll have maybe I'll have your kids in these classes when I go through them the next time. So anyway, 106 and 107. I'm going to share my screen here, and then we'll get started. Let's take a look at today's fable, The Eagle and the Fox. All right, the fable of the Eagle and the Fox. And in the textbook, if you open the textbook, you've got this pretty cool picture of the eagle and the fox on the next page. You'll understand what's going on in that picture. Kind of ugly, kind of scary looking, good for Halloween week. But you'll understand what's going on in this picture after we read this fable. So let's take a look at the eagle and the fox. All right, let's read it together. Pay attention carefully so we can get all the details, and then we'll talk about all of the information that you need to know to complete the assignments and get credit for these lessons. So this is Aesop's fable of the eagle and the fox. An eagle, looking around for something to feed her young ones with, spied a fox's cub. In the chat real quick, what is a cub? What does it mean, a fox's cub? What's a cub? What's a cub? A baby, good. All right, so a baby. Okay, so the eagle, looking for something to feed her babies with, spied a fox's cub basking in the sun. She swooped down upon this cub and was about to carry him off when the old fox came up and with tears in her eyes, implored the eagle. What does implored mean? What do you think implored means? The eagle swooped down, and the mother fox, with tears in her eyes, implored the eagle. Begged, very good, okay? So you don't need to look it up in a dictionary. Even if you don't know what that word means, you can just sort of figure it out by thinking about the context, right? The mother came up with tears in her eyes and did something to the eagle. Obviously, she didn't sing, she didn't dance, she didn't laugh. We know that it's something negative. She implored, she begged the eagle. Now, notice what she says to the eagle, because this is important. The fox, the fox goes to the eagle crying and begs her, it's a mother eagle, by the love which she as a mother feels for her own young, her own children, to spare the cub, who is her only child. So she asks the eagle to think about her own young, the ones that she's actually looking for food for, and spare this fox's cub, her only child. The eagle, whose nest was in a very high tree, made light of the fox's prayers. What does it mean to make light of? What does it mean when it says that the eagle made light of the fox's prayers? What does that mean? To make fun of? Pay no attention to? Make fun of? Yeah, very good. Ignore. Good. Okay. Very good. The eagle made fun or made light of or ignored the fox's prayers and carried the cub to her brood. Her brood means her children. She was about to divide the cub. This gets pretty gruesome here. She was about to divide the cub among her baby eagles when the fox, bent upon revenge, ran to an altar in a neighboring field on which some country people had been sacrificing a kid. And that doesn't mean a kid like you guys are kids. It means a baby goat, right? It doesn't mean someone's sacrificing a child, sacrificing a baby goat. So the mother fox runs to an altar where someone was sacrificing a baby goat and seized thence a flaming brand. What's a flaming brand? What's a flaming brand? What does that mean? A flaming brand, a torch, a branch, right? Something that's on fire, right? Something that's in the fire, piece of wood, a stick, like a charcoal, something like that, right? A flaming brand. Obviously the fox didn't grab, I just said charcoal. That's pretty dumb because obviously the fox wouldn't have grabbed the charcoal, right? So probably a stick, part of which was on fire. Okay, a flaming brand. And the mother fox, grabbing the burning stick, let's say burning stick, burning piece of wood, good, ran towards the tree, meaning to set the tree on fire. The eagle, terrified at the approaching ruin of her family, was glad to give back the cub safe and sound to his mother. And this is the fable of the eagle and the fox. All right. Now, what I'd like to say about this fable here is that there are two important lessons that I want to talk about. And remember, I've told you, I tell you this every week. You can continue to think about these fables and think about more and more lessons that are in the fables, but I just usually talk about one. In this case, I'm going to talk about two. All right, two lessons in this fable. First, let's think about all the details. What is the character of a fox usually like in Aesop's fables? How does Aesop usually talk about foxes? Sneaky, sly, smart, cunning, good, all right? Now, in this fable, do we see the fox being cunning or sneaky? No, right? It's just the mother fox, and she's crying and begging the eagle to leave her baby alone. All right, so we've got an interesting little difference in this fable because the fox is sort of the good guy or the good girl in this fable. The eagle comes to take the baby away from the fox. Now, why was the eagle coming to take away the baby? Why was the eagle coming to take away the baby fox? Why? To feed her own young. So think about it. What is the eagle thinking about? What is the eagle thinking about as she comes to get this baby fox? She's thinking to feed her own baby. She's thinking of herself, right? She's thinking of her own young, her own kids. Good, all right? Don't you think it's a little bit crazy? And when you step back and think about this, isn't it a little bit crazy that one creature would think that in order to take care of her own babies, it would be okay to go and kill another creature's babies, right? Doesn't that seem ridiculous? You see, this is very weird to think about. This eagle, concerned about her own children, we would say, oh, she's such a good mother, right? Look at how she cares about her babies. But the problem is, she doesn't care about anyone else's babies. She sees this baby fox and says, oh, good, let me go grab that to feed my own babies. But she doesn't think about the mother fox. She doesn't think about the baby fox. And yet most people, I think, would if they just focused on the eagle, they would say, oh, she's a good mother. Look at how she works to take care of her children. But it's the way she works, right? What she does that really doesn't make any sense. It's very selfish. So she goes down selfishly, not even seeming to think about how ridiculous it is what she's doing. And so the mother fox pleads with her and says, what in the world are you doing? How can you come down here and think to take my baby to use it as food for your babies? If you love your babies, don't you think I also love my babies? And so the fox pleads with the eagle to just think and not be so selfish and crazy, but think. And this is an example of what we call the golden rule, right? In Christianity, we say the golden rule is to do to others what you want them to do to you. And if you don't like something being done to you, you should never do it to somebody else. So this is an example of the eagle not practicing the golden rule. Okay. And remember, this is just Aesop's fables. So it's not realistic. Obviously, an eagle is created by God to go and kill baby foxes or whatever else it wants to eat. So there's nothing wrong in nature with an eagle killing another animal. That's what they're created to do. It's just instinct. But in this fable, the eagle and the fox are like representatives of people, right? But different kinds of people. So that might be another thing to think about, okay? So the fox pleads with the eagle to think about the golden rule, to do to others as you would want others to do to you, or to not do to others what you would not want others to do to you. So she pleads with the eagle, and how does the eagle respond? Does the eagle say, yeah, you know, you're right. I didn't think about that. Sorry, I'm being selfish. How does the eagle respond? The eagle doesn't respond well, right? The eagle doesn't even care. It says the eagle made light of the fox's prayers and carried the cub to her brood. So the eagle didn't even care, was not merciful, did not practice the golden rule, only thought about herself. Okay, or we could say about her own children. Some people think that doing bad things is okay as long as you're doing it for your children, right? So the fox goes away. I mean, the eagle goes away and takes the cub. The eagle chooses not to practice the golden rule. So the eagle makes a bad choice. Now, that's the first lesson. The first lesson is that we should always think of others, think of the golden rule, and not do to anyone else what we would not want someone to do to us. We should not be selfish like that, but we should think about what Jesus or what Christians call the golden rule, okay? Jesus doesn't call it the golden rule, does he? He just says it, and we call it the golden rule. So think of the golden rule. The eagle is an example of someone who doesn't practice the golden rule. All right. Now, the second lesson is what happens afterwards. The fox is being pretty friendly. The fox begs the eagle not to take her baby. The eagle takes it, and then what does the fox do? Well, the fox kind of goes crazy, right? The fox goes into desperation mode. The fox has no way to defend its baby, so what does the fox decide to do? Go and grab a burning stick and burn the whole tree down, right? So the fox thinks, you know, what can I possibly do? Now, what do you think is dumb about what the fox does? What's dumb about the fox's plan? If you think about it, it's a pretty dumb idea. What's dumb about the fox's plan? Yeah, very good. Her baby was in the tree, right? She'd kill her own baby. So that's not very intelligent to say, oh yeah, you want to take my baby? Well, watch this. I'm going to launch a nuclear bomb and blow the whole city up, right? That's not a good idea. So the fox is sort of, you know, out of her mind at this point, thinking crazy thoughts, and she goes and gets a firebrand, a burning stick, and comes back threatening to set the whole tree on fire. And then the eagle panics because the eagle realizes that this fox is nuts. And so the eagle says, you know, no, stop. I'll give you your baby back. The eagle, terrified at the approaching ruin of her family, was glad to give back the cub safe and sound to his mother. And that's the end of the story. Okay. So this second lesson that I want to talk about is that the eagle, I want you to think about this. The eagle, by being selfish, provoked the fox to do something totally crazy. This is the danger of not practicing the golden rule. This is the danger. If you do something nasty to somebody else, if you don't pay attention to other people's, you know, cries for mercy and for, you know, who are begging you to not do bad things to them, what can often happen is you can provoke those people to go crazy, and they'll seek to take some action that could be, terribly destructive for everybody. So it's bad. It's bad to go against the golden rule. It's bad because you'll provoke people to respond to you in dangerous ways. Okay. So two lessons there, and I want to talk about them a little bit. The first lesson is not living according to the golden rule, not thinking about others. That's what it means to be just, right? There should be a balance between everyone. Everything should be fair. That's what it means to be just. So for you to make yourself richer by stealing from somebody else, by making them poorer, that's not just. The golden rule is about being just. So we always need to practice the golden rule, and sometimes it's very difficult because it's hard to do for other people what we would want done for ourselves, because it's hard. It's difficult to live like that. All right. That's the first lesson. The second one is how the eagle causes the fox to, seek out some very dangerous response. Okay. Now, if you pay attention to the news, you'll see this all the time, because what usually happens, and you may experience this in your own life, what usually happens is we only learn about one side of the story, right? We'll hear some terrible story, like there was a crime committed, somebody beat somebody up, or somebody killed somebody, and we'll hear one side of the story. But when we learn more about the details, we often find that the person who got killed or who got hurt, did something that provoked the other person to go crazy and take some kind of violent action. So it's very rare that a person just randomly goes crazy and starts, attacking somebody else. That's very rare. Usually there's wrongs done on both sides. And so if all we saw was the fox, we would think the fox was evil, but that's because we missed the first part of the story. The lesson that I want you to learn from this is that when you act selfishly to other people, you actually put yourself in danger. When you act selfishly to other people, you put yourself in danger. Now, you might think, when you're acting selfishly, you might think, this person can't do anything to me. It's just this weak little kid, this weak person, maybe this poor person. They can't do anything to me. But sometimes those are the people who go crazy, right? Because, they have no way to respond except to do something terrible and destructive. And we often bring these troubles on ourselves. So when you act selfishly towards others, you provoke them to respond in violent and nasty ways. And that's one of the reasons you should be afraid of acting like that. Okay. Follow me in the chat. You're going to waste the time here and miss the lesson. The purpose of these lessons, remember, is to help you complete the fables and get good scores on those fables. So to come in here and chat about other things isn't very smart. Okay. So the eagle doesn't practice the golden rule. Spiritually speaking, that's bad. But what's even worse is when you do bad things, you provoke bad responses from other people. And even though they should not return evil for evil, you have no excuse if you do things to others and provoke them to do evil back to you. In our society, our crazy society, many people think they can do whatever they want. And then when people respond to them, they act like those people are bad and they were good, where those people are responding in ways that they should have expected, and they provoke those people to anger or violence. Okay, so two lessons in this fable. First, always practice the golden rule. And second, think about the danger of provoking someone to respond when you mistreat them, right? Think about the danger, the consequences of your actions. Sometimes, running your mouth, being a big mouth, saying nasty things to people can get you in a lot of trouble. Not because, somebody like your parents or, the law gets you in trouble, because that person can come back and do something destructive, and you have to learn not to provoke people to anger. Okay, so 2 lessons there on the fable of the eagle and the fox. All right, pretty good story, good lesson. Be careful to practice the golden rule. Don't provoke other people to anger. Even if those other people are wrong, you might say, well, they're wrong. You know, that fox shouldn't have threatened my babies. You can make whatever excuse you want, but if your whole family is dead, it's not going to matter if you've got a good excuse, right? A wise person sees evil coming and avoids it. So it's a good lesson to think twice about how you act before you provoke someone to retaliate or respond violently. Okay, that's the fable of the eagle and the fox. Any questions about that fable, or any comments anyone would like to share about that fable? Anything you noticed or thought of that I didn't mention? Any comments or thoughts on that fable? We're still going to do another one, so hold on, but I think that one was pretty simple. Okay. All right. So that was the fable of the eagle and the fox. And like I said before, if we look at this picture now, I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we can see more of this picture. If you look at this picture, you should be able to understand what's going on. It's a little bit dark. These pictures here, they're called engravings. It's a style of drawing. The way that these drawings are actually made is not how you think they're made. The way these images are made is an artist takes a piece of metal, a thin sheet of metal, and instead of using a pen, he actually uses a metal pointed tool, and he simply draws lines. He cuts lines in the piece of metal. And then what they do is they rub ink over the metal and they wipe the metal off, and then they press paper on it, and the ink settles into the lines where the artist, drew on the metal, and it prints on paper. So the art, if you look this up, it's called engraving. I'll type it. It's a type of art called engraving, where the artist actually draws the picture on a thin sheet of metal. Like, if you think about aluminum foil, right? If you go in the kitchen and mom has some aluminum foil or tin foil, imagine something a little thicker than that. And instead of drawing with ink on paper, you actually took, a sharp object like a pin or something like that, a pointed metal tool, and just made lines in the foil, and then rubbed ink all over the foil, wiped the ink off so the ink stayed in the lines, and then pressed it on a sheet of paper. That's how engravers made these images, where they were made by hand for books. So that was drawn by hand. If you look really close, if you zoom in on it and look really close, you'll see that all it is tons and tons of tiny lines. Okay, it's just tons of lines. Does anyone take drawing lessons and know what it's called? These little lines, see how the lines go back and forth and they cross each other? That's how the artist makes it lighter or darker. Anybody know what it's called? Very good. Michelle says it. Cross hatching. Very good, Adel. So that's what's going on here. If you look really carefully, you'll see that the whole drawing is just made up of tons and tons of tiny little lines. And then when you zoom out, it looks wonderful, but it's really just a whole collection of lines drawn by the engraver. Pretty impressive. And that's how illustrations used to be made for printers, so that the printer can take that engraving and put it in and then print it on every page. That's why when you see the illustrations on the pages, you'll always notice that the next page is empty, right? The next page is blank, because that engraving has to be printed on a separate sheet of paper and stuck in the book. So the back of it is always empty. Okay. All right. Yeah, it can also be done in wood, except when it's done on wood, it's not called engraving. It's usually called woodcut. Okay. It's called a woodcut, where an artist will carve the image into the wood, and then they'll do the same thing. They'll use the cut to print on paper. Okay. Yeah, pretty amazing artwork. And again, like I said, if you get that book opened on your computer, just zoom in on it and you can see all those little lines that the engraver inscribed on the metal. Pretty cool. Okay. So now if we look at this picture, I'm sorry, I got off on the engraving. If we look at the picture, we see the eagle up here. We see the eagle babies in the nest here. We see some old animal bones, which means that they've done this before. And then here we see the baby fox in the nest. And then down here below, what do we see down below over here? Can you see that? What do we see down here in the bottom of the picture? What's down there? The mother fox. And what does she got? What does she have in her hand? She's got the fiery brand, right? So we see the fox coming to burn that tree down. Okay, so now you know what's in that picture. All right. So that's the fable of the eagle and the fox. All right. Okay, let's move on to the next one. This is fable number 107. 107, the fable of Jupiter and the ass. So let's read this fable together and learn a second one, all right? Jupiter and the ass. A certain ass, now we've got to understand what exactly an ass is, right? An ass is, we can say it's a donkey. What are donkeys used for? What are these animals used for? What are they? Right? Who cares what it is? What is it used for? None of you, I would expect that none of you have a donkey. I used to have a donkey, but I don't have one anymore. What are they used for? What are donkeys used for? Carrying supplies. Good. They're used for work. Okay. They're work animals. They're called pack animals because they're used to carry things for people. So you can take a donkey. It's like a half the size of a horse. They're not really good for anything except walking and carrying things. But you can take packages or bags and things like that, and you can tie them all together and then load them on the back of the donkey. And then you can just walk the donkey, and the donkey is a lot stronger than a person. So the donkey can carry hundreds of pounds, and all you've got to do is walk that donkey. So donkeys are used as pack animals. They're used to carry things. All right. That's what they do. So that's the main character of our story here. You can ride on them. Yeah, you can get on them, but they're not like horses. Like they're really not meant to be ridden on. Usually they're very stubborn. You have to carry a stick when you ride it. You put a bridle in its mouth and hold on to the reins and then hold a stick and sort of whack it in the butt to make it move forward, and then you can ride it. But they don't like to be ridden. You'd have to find a good one that allows you to sit on it and ride it. Okay. Yeah, there. And now, you mentioned Mary and Joseph rode donkeys. What's important about that is that donkeys are poor people's animals, right? Poor people use donkeys. So when we read about Mary and Joseph riding on a donkey, it tells us something about their family, that they weren't wealthy. Okay. Wealthier people ride horses. Horses are much better for riding, much faster, much easier to ride, much more beautiful, worth a lot more money. So wealthier people have horses. Poorer people use donkeys. They're poor people's animals. Okay. So let's get to our fable. All right, before our chat goes nuts on us and we start talking about camels like Bella just did. All right. So let's look at the fable. So this is the fable of Jupiter and the ass. When we say Jupiter, what are we talking about? What is Jupiter? What are we talking about here? God. Okay. So Jupiter, remember, Aesop was not a Christian. He lived long before Christianity. So when he talks about Jupiter, Jupiter is just the name of God, the highest and greatest God that they believed in. All right. So we could rename this if we want to. We could rename it God and the Ass. Okay. And it's just a fable. So it's not a real story. He's not saying that this is a real event that took place between any god and a donkey. It's just a fable. So don't get upset by this. Just relax. It's a fable, right? Just a story. So Jupiter and the Ass, fable number 107. Let's pay attention to this, okay? A certain ass that belonged to a gardener. So we've got two characters here, the ass and the gardener. A certain ass that belonged to a gardener was weary of carrying heavy burdens. So the gardener would use the donkey to carry all of his stuff, a couple different things he could do. He could load the donkey with all the fruits and vegetables and make the donkey carry it to the market. That's one thing they could do. Or he could just use the donkey on the in the garden to do work. Like he can cut all the weeds down, tie them all together, load them up on the donkey's back, and make the donkey carry them over to the compost pile. Okay. So this gardener is using the donkey to carry heavy burdens. And so the donkey prays to Jupiter and asks Jupiter to give him a new master. He doesn't want to live and work for this gardener anymore. He wants a new master. So Jupiter granted his prayer and gave him for a master a tile maker. What is a tile maker? What does that mean? What is a tile maker? And don't say a person who makes tiles. Explain what a tile maker is. Floor people? Let's be more specific than that. What is a tile maker? A tile maker. All right, so good. Pottery, they make your floor pretty. Let's get beyond making things pretty, right? What is a tile maker? What does a tile work with? What does a tile work with? Is it tile, concrete, right? Cement, usually. Stone, clay, good. Heavy stuff, very good, Zuriana. That's the point. So he was working, the donkey was working for a gardener who would load him up with fruits and vegetables, maybe, weeds and things like that. He was working for a gardener, but complained and asked for a new master. So Jupiter granted his prayer and gave him for a master a tile maker who made him carry heavier burdens than before. So his situation got even worse. All right. So instead of working for a gardener and carrying plants around, he was assigned to a tile maker and was made to carry heavy tiles around. It was even worse. So again, the donkey came to Jupiter and besought him. What does the word besought mean? What does besought mean? Besought him. What does that mean? Begged. Very good. Confronted him, asked him. Yeah, those are all good answers. Okay. So the donkey came to Jupiter and besought him, begged him, besought him to grant him a milder master. What is a milder master? What does that mean? He asked Jupiter for a milder master. What does that mean? A gentler master, an easier master, one who makes him work less, nicer, good. Very good. Those are all good answers. So he came to Jupiter and begged him to grant him a milder master, or at any rate, a different one. Anybody but this tile maker, right? And then the god, laughing at his folly, laughing at the donkey's folly, thereupon made him over to a tanner. So Jupiter gave the donkey a new master, and this time it was a tanner. Does anyone know what tanner is? What a tanner is? No. Has anyone ever seen the cartoon at Christmas time called Small One? Has anybody ever seen Small One? It's a Christmas time cartoon. No. A tanner is a person who works with animal skins. So a person who, prepares animal skins for use to make bags or to make coats, to make saddles and things like that. So a tanner is a person who kills animals, or he doesn't necessarily kill animals, but he gets animal skins and he prepares them for use. So if you get a leather coat or have leather shoes or a leather bag, obviously that leather doesn't come directly from an animal. That skin is taken from an animal, like leather is the skin of a cow, but it's got to be worked with and prepared to be used as leather. That's the work of a tanner, Okay. So Jupiter gives the donkey a tanner for his master and laughs at his folly. Someone asked before, what is folly? Who can answer that? What is folly? Jupiter laughed at his folly. What does folly mean? Foolishness, right? Being dumb, a mistake. Good. Those are all good answers. Very good. So the god laughs at him that he makes this mistake again, asks for a different master, and now Jupiter gives him a tanner for his master. Then the ass was worked harder than ever. So his situation got even worse. He was worked harder than ever, and he soon upbraided himself for his stupidity. He upbraided himself. What does upbraided mean? Berated himself? That's very good. What does upbraided mean? Admonished himself? Very good. Got mad at himself? Very good. Okay, that's the idea there. He yelled at himself. He was angry at himself. He criticized himself. Okay, find fault in himself. Very good. Very good. Okay. So the ass was worked harder than ever, and soon he upbraided himself for his stupidity. Now, said he, I have a master who not only beats me living, but who will not spare my hide even when I am dead. I have a master who not only beats me living, but who will not spare my hide even when I am dead. What does hide mean? What does hide mean there? The skin of an animal. Good, okay? And he says that this master, the tanner, will beat him, will not spare his hide even when he is dead. What that means is the tanners, what they do is they actually prepare the skin. They stretch it out, and sometimes they beat it to help it to stretch, because think about it, the skin is wrapped around an animal, so it's all curved, right? If you just cut the animal off a skin, it would be all curved and shaped weird. The tanner has to try to get it perfectly flat and straight. So they stretch it out, they tie it up and stretch it out, and then they usually beat it to help it to stretch out and get flat like a big sheet of leather. Okay, so the donkey says, now I have a master who not only beats me while I'm alive, but is also going to beat me when I'm dead, because he's going to tan my hide, right? So that's the idea. You know, sometimes parents might threaten their children with a spanking, and they'll say, I'm going to tan your hide. And that's what it means. Okay. So the tanner is going to beat the donkey not only while he's living to make him work, but also after he's dead is going to beat his skin when he stretches it out to prepare it. Do they kill them? Yeah. Now think about it, right? A cow would not be killed by a tanner. A cow would be killed by a butcher because of all the cow's meat. But a donkey, nobody eats donkey meat. At least you shouldn't be eating donkey meat. Nobody eats donkey meat. So normally a tanner might kill an animal like a donkey or a goat or something like that. But usually animals that have valuable meat, they go to a butcher, and then the tanner could get the skin from the butcher, could buy it from the butcher. But if the animal is a less valuable animal like a donkey or a goat, then the tanner might kill it himself. Okay, there's nothing nasty about it. It's how the world works. Okay, you would not want to be a butcher. It's really not as bad as it sounds. The butchers do things in ways that are pretty clean and simple. Okay, if you've never been to a butcher, it's pretty neat to see how they do things. You know, we live on a farm, and we used to actually raise lots of cows and pigs and sheep and all kinds of animals. So we used to go to the butcher all the time. It's not that bad, really. You just bring your animal to the butcher takes care of everything, and the butcher just gives you your meat in packages when it's all done. You don't actually see what happens. The butcher takes care of all that. All right, but we're talking about a tanner here. A tanner is just the person who works with the skin. Okay, so what's the moral of this fable? It's pretty simple, right? The moral is that in the beginning, there's a donkey working for a gardener. In the beginning, the donkey's working for a gardener, And what does the donkey do? What does the donkey do wrong while he's working for the gardener? What does the donkey do wrong? What does the donkey do wrong? He's working for the gardener and he complains, right? Let's stay with my questions. The donkey complains. He imagines that he's got a bad situation. And isn't that what we always do? We always imagine that our situation is so terrible, right? We always imagine, we always exaggerate. We imagine that our situation's so bad because I didn't get this one thing that I wanted, or because, I can't put the air conditioner on 60 degrees in the summer and mom's yelling at me that it shouldn't be lower than 72. Boo-hoo, my life is so miserable and difficult. We always complain. We always think our life is so difficult. Okay. But what we don't think about is that it's very possible that our life could get much worse. Our life could get much worse. And what this teaches us is that one thing that God could do to teach us a lesson, when we complain about our situation, God could give us a worse situation to teach us a lesson. So we need to be careful that we don't complain about our situation because it could be much worse. There are many people. You put the AC on 50, that's called a refrigerator. That's not an air conditioner. That's a refrigerator. Okay. But we always think our situation is worse than it. We always complain about, we think that we deserve better than we have. But the truth is, and follow me here, pay attention here. The truth is that sometimes if we're not careful, if we're not thankful, if we don't appreciate what we have, we can despise it, lose it, or give it away and end up with something worse. And that's why we need to really guard ourselves against complaining. All right. So we see this donkey was foolish because he was not content in his situation. Follow me here. Yeah, stay on the topic. Listen, this is important. I'm talking about the purpose and the meaning of this fable. Listen carefully. This fable teaches us that when we think about complaining, we're usually only thinking about how things could be better. But what we've got to be very careful to think about is that things could be worse. And so when we change something, or when we complain and make a change, we can't be stupid and think that it's necessarily going to get better, because it could get worse. And we've got to be very careful. So we've got to learn to be careful. If you have a situation in your life, that you don't think is very good, you've got to be very careful that you don't make it worse. So what we have to do, there's nothing wrong with wanting to change your situation. You may have a situation that's not as good as it might be. But when we change a situation, we've got to be careful not to quickly get rid of what we have, but we've got to keep what we have and be patient and improve it little by little, right? We've got to be careful to keep what we have and improve it carefully, right? That's what a wise person would do. He wouldn't just quickly make a change. He would try to keep what he has because that's already pretty good. And he would try to just move to something a little better, but be careful not to lose what he has and end up with something worse. Many people will get rid of something that they have that's good enough, and they'll end up not getting something better, but getting something much worse. Who can think of some examples of that? Who can think of an example where you've got something that's pretty good, but you're not content with it, and you choose to get rid of it or trade it or something else, and you can end up with something worse? Who can think of a good example? I'm not asking about fables. I'm not asking about other fables. Who can think about an example, maybe even from your own life, where you did something like that? Because we do this all the time. We're like the donkey. Who can think of an example where you might have done this? Who can think of a good example of where you had something, you were kind of fussy and complaining, chose to get rid of it, and ended up with something worse? Who can think of a good example? Being picky about food, yeah, that's a good example. Clothes. Who could think of a good example? Changing a house, that's a very good example. You think school is bad, then you quit school and you don't, yeah, things don't work out well. Having one chore, complaining about your chore and getting another chore, it'd be much worse, right? Yeah, that's right. Okay. Having a car, fussing about your car, and then ending up with a worse car. Good. So you can see how that's dangerous, and we have to be careful, right? You've got to be careful. Now, let me ask you this. Is there anything wrong? Is there anything wrong with wanting to change something? Is there anything wrong with that, with wanting change? No, there's nothing wrong, right? But what do we have to be careful to remember when we try to change things? What do we have to be careful to remember? What do we have to be careful to think about? Stick with me here. What do we have to be careful? There's nothing wrong with having change. We have to be careful that we keep what we have, right? And make it better little by little. Now, let me give you a good example of this. I'll give you a good example and a bad example. In the Catholic Church, there are many people who complain and they don't like the Catholic Church. They complain, oh, this is bad, the music's bad, the decorations are bad, I don't like the priest, I don't like the people complain all the time in the Catholic Church, okay? Complain about things. And so they imagine that they can make things better. So let's think about two examples. Ready? One example is the example of Martin Luther. And another example is the example of Saint Francis. Okay. What did Martin Luther do when he was unhappy with the Catholic Church? What did Martin Luther choose to do? What did Martin Luther choose to do when he was unhappy in the Catholic Church? He chose to rebel, chose to break off from the Catholic Church, right? Chose to make another church, divided the church. Yeah. Decided to make a new religion, create his own religion, made another church. Very good. All right. So you have an example of Martin Luther. Now I want you to think about another example. Think about Saint Francis. What did Saint Francis wasn't happy with the church either. What did Saint Francis do? What did Saint Francis do? He wasn't happy with the church. What did Saint Francis do? He tried to reform it. He stayed put. He built it up. He obeyed. Very good. He started a new religious order, right? He started a new religious order. He tried to fix the church. He tried to build the church, right? So notice what Saint Francis did. Very good. Notice what he did. He kept what he had and he worked carefully to make it better, right? He kept what he had and worked carefully to make it better. Martin Luther did the opposite. Martin Luther lost the whole thing, right? So we see there a good lesson that, you know, would be a good example for this fable of Jupiter and the ass. We could say that someone like Martin Luther is like the ass here, foolish. He ends up with something much worse. Whereas Saint Francis is a good example of a person who wants change, but does it and seeks it in a wise and patient way. Okay. So that's the fable of Jupiter and the ass. Okay. So very good. The fable of Jupiter and the ass, the moral is to be very careful. And let me say this, when you do this assignment, don't just say be careful what you wish for. That's too lazy. I want you to be more specific than that. Be more exact. This fable, the moral lesson of this fable is to be careful when you want change. Be careful that you keep what you have and make it better. You don't just throw it away and lose it and end up with something worse. So you have to be careful to keep your position and improve it little by little. Another good lesson that, you know, another good application of this would be if, let's say that you don't, let's say you have a job and you want a better job, you've got to be careful, right? You've got to be careful. Sometimes you have to keep the job you don't like and work at night to prepare for a better job and slowly make the change over time. You don't just quit when something's bad. You might end up with something worse, okay? So there's lots of applications we can think about to this. That's going to be all for today, Margaret. So don't worry if your computer's almost dead. We covered two fables, the fable of the eagle and the fox, and the fable of Jupiter and the ass. I hope that that was helpful. We went through both of them pretty quickly. They both have very good lessons for us, good moral lessons to help us to live well and be happy. So what I recommend you do, now that you've got these stories in your head, go read them over by yourself, complete the assignments and get those turned in, okay? Why did they choose the characters? Let me just finish up before I get into that. So if any of you would like to get going, you're free to go now. I'm not going to get into a lot of, obviously we're not going to do any more fables, but I'm going to talk about the characters real quick. Jude, I already talked about the moral of the fable of the eagle and the fox, but I would like to talk about the characters. Why the donkey? Because the donkey, first of all, the donkey doesn't deserve very much. It's not a very special animal. He's not like a thoroughbred horse that deserves a beautiful stable and expert trainers and all this kind of stuff. It's just a common donkey, right? All the donkey does is carry stuff. That's what he does. He really doesn't have any place to complain about his situation. So his complaining was foolish. So that's why Aesop would choose an ass or a donkey for this story. And then Jupiter is presented to us as God, so he's wise. He knows all of the possible options, and he knows it wouldn't be wise to complain in that situation because it could be much worse. And he gives the donkey worse situations. Okay. And then there's just a couple different characters like the gardener, the tile maker, and the tanner. They're just examples of different kinds of masters who would make the donkey work more or less. Okay. So I hope that that's helpful. Get those assignments done now and get them turned in while you have all of this in your head. I think that's the easiest way to get these assignments done. Liana asked, what about the eagle and the fox? As far as the characters go, I think it's just pretty simple that the eagle is a predator who, you know, is very big and powerful and can swoop down and grab a smaller animal, and the fox cub is an earthbound smaller animal that really can't defend itself. Okay, I think that's all that there is to that fable. Okay, so I hope that that's helpful. I'm going to stop the recording in a minute, but if there are any questions or anything else you'd like to discuss, please feel free to chat. But that's all for today's Aesop's Fables class. And again, we looked at the eagle and the fox. That's fable number 106, and Jupiter and the ass, which is fable number 107. Hope that was helpful. Thank you guys for coming. I'll see you next time. God bless. I'll be here in chat.